Y'all, thank you for being here. Appreciate your time. Want to keep on track. I'm Richard Osborne with Pickens County Planning and Development, and our department handles planning and zoning, licenses, permits. We work with all the other county departments to make sure that there's good coordination. But as part of the comprehensive plan, this has been something where our state planner, Ethan Calhoun out of Rome, has been coordinating the process. I've been working with folks on their comments, suggestions, questions here locally. And like I said, I really do appreciate y'all being here. Looking through the agenda for what we're going to do tonight, you've got in front of you as part of the packet a summary of what happened at the last meeting on October 17. So y'all are welcome to look through that whenever you want to. Does anybody have any follow-up comments or questions from the meeting in October? All right, very good. So just come back to me at a later time if you want to follow up with anything about that meeting or about the comprehensive plan in general. What I'll do now is turn it over to Clayton Preble and Roger Schultz, who are going to speak to y'all about a group that's been meeting separately, but also has ideas about incorporating suggestions into the comprehensive plan. Thank you, Clayton.
Thank you, Richard. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Come on. I left home very early this morning. I've only been home briefly since. I need a little more enthusiasm. So I'm Clayton Preble, and I've been a resident of Pickens County since 1997. Taxpayer since 1997. And last year, a little earlier in this, I attended one of the meetings here, early September I guess it was, when they were talking about the tax digest. And was anybody in that meeting? Do you recall when you were in that meeting? Let me see a show of hands. Well, if you were there and you remember that there was great angst, if you will, about where taxes were going and if there was going to be any opportunity to pare those taxes. People want services, and some of them don't want to pay taxes. There was a lot of conversation in that room about should county employees have benefits. I mean, it was a mixed bag, and many of the folks that were in that particular meeting probably like me, had worked for companies and had moved here, and we had benefits for the companies that we worked for. And but the whole thing was people concerned about taxes and where they were going. There was also a lot of discussion about economic development or the lack thereof in that meeting. People trying to compare Pickens to Gilmer to Cherokee to Dawson. And so I stood up and raised the question that, you know, rather than having faulting the commissioners or bashing the employees of the county for their benefits and their taxes, maybe we need to step back and look at if there's a better way here of bending the curve down of tax cost increase. Maybe there's an opportunity to consolidate services that can reduce the overall cost of serving the community. So I was sitting next to Dan Poole. There he is. So Dan elbows me, not very sharply, but he elbows me, and he said, "Clayton, if you'll write an editorial, I'll publish it." So I did, and Dan published it, and from that, two of my friends contacted me. One is Roger Schultz, who you'll hear from in just a minute, and the other is Don House, who's sitting back there on the back. And they said, you know, you've raised some interesting ideas here, and we ought to explore that. So we began to meet as a group, as the three of us, and began to kick around some ideas. What are the kinds of things that could be done that could consolidate services within the county and the city that could better serve everybody? As you know, the city is the only one with a sewage system. Both the city and the county have water systems. There are grants that are available for communities out there, and to some extent, I guess, Pickens and the city of Jasper and the other cities compete for those grants. So there are certain things. I'm a volunteer support firefighter up on Monument Road, and so I'm familiar a lot with fire services and what's going on there, and maybe there's an opportunity to consolidate fire services. There are grants for fire engines and fire equipment and that sort of thing. Maybe there are ideas that can be explored. So Roger and Don and I began to kick these things around, and then we began to add other people to our group who heard about what we were doing and just wanted to kind of talk about it. And so from that, we continued to explore. Let me say that tonight, and we appreciate Richard inviting us to I don't like the word conversation. I think let's call it a discussion. We don't profess to have all of the answers. We have a lot of ideas. And what we'd like to hear from you all as we talk about some of these ideas is to understand if you think those things have merit. If you think they do have merit, then Richard's going to record that, and hopefully some of these ideas can become components of the comprehensive plan and provide a foundation for us going forward to be able to really dig into some of these things and come up with solutions that will benefit everybody in Pickens County. You know, people ask me, I live in the county, they say, where are you from? Well, I'm from Jasper. And so I wrote a letter to the editor a couple of weeks ago, and I said, you know, as goes Jasper in large part, so goes Pickens County. And we're all in this together. And so the objective here is to figure out a better way to address some of these issues and come up with solutions that the people that we elect can run with if they see that the large part of the general public is supportive of it. I was going to introduce Roger and Don and all that, but I decided I wouldn't, at least in terms of formal education and that sort of thing. But let me just say this about us and what we're interested in. We all married women smarter than we were. So hopefully Chris will see this and appreciate the comments. We're all, the three of us are all Pickens County taxpayers. Another significant point is none of the three of us have any interest in public office. We are simply doing what we're doing here to help guide the process. All the three of us have a history of working in our respective communities wherever we might have lived, and we still do in large part for the things that we do. Roger's been involved in many nonprofit organizations that have positively impacted the community, and Don and I serve in that capacity as well on other communities. So our goal here is just to help develop interest in ideas and topics that have merit, that you folks think have merit. So if you think, if we explore some of these things, if you don't think they have any merit, we want to hear from you. If you think they do have merit, we want to hear from you there as well. Okay? Don't be bashful. So that's how we got here, and that's who we are and what we're about. So the first item that I'm going to want to explore, and what Don and Roger and I would do is, we're going to trade off here in a few minutes, is water systems. I live on a well, and some of you probably have county water, some of you may have city water. Is there, let me see a show of hands, who has city water and who has county water? And who has a well? Yeah.
And we used to have no water.
So, I mean, it seems to me that that's an area. I know that the city is working on plans to enhance the water services there. I know that the county is working on plans to enhance their water services there. I know that Big Canoe is working on plans to try to improve their water system there. There are a lot of individual activities. I'm not saying it's the right answer, but Etowah, over in Dawson County, Etowah Water and Sewage Authority were formed many years ago. I haven't studied them. I don't know if that's a good model for us or not, but it's certainly one that should be explored, something similar to that. Water and sewage are important resources. Commercial development, sewage is critical to that. For other types of development, water is crucial to that. So there's, I think there's merit in some sort of combined water authority that represents both the city and the counties, the cities and the counties together. And I think it's something that needs to be fully considered in the comprehensive plan. Any thoughts about that from y'all? I mean, what do you think? Is this a crazy idea, or does it deserve further consideration and study? What do you think?
Not crazy.
Not crazy. Yes, ma'am.
I think it's a great idea.
You'd like to see it?
No.
I think it needs to be fully explored.
Okay. Yes.
Years ago, the County Water Infrastructure Committee, which I was a member at the time, addressed the water supply was the most critical issue facing Pickens County as far as growth. And if we didn't get it under control, and one of those factors was the systems, and coordinating the systems, and the leakage in the systems, and loss of water, and so forth. And I think during the drought period, all of those witnesses went on to try to take care of Jasper.
Right.
And now we've advanced somewhat where Big Canoe system is tied into the county in case there has to be some flow back and forth. And all those systems work better together.
Yes.
At the same time, Big Canoe is going through the situation utility company,
Right.
trying to sell the system. And Big Canoe thinking about establishing their own authority. It may be a good time to build all those together.
Yeah, I understand there are not many buyers of the Big Canoe system. Or do you live in Big Canoe?
Yes.
So, good, thank you for that. Other thoughts?
I think the challenge for the city is that though we've kept taxes at a fairly consistent low rate for a long time, we get a substantial portion of our operating revenue from income from our water system. So if you're talking about powers that be with the city, that's going to be the biggest question that's going to come up is how are we going to compensate for the potential loss of revenue that the city would have? Mm-hmm. And you can question how that came about and whether or not it should be done or not, but that's the reality of what's happening in Jasper. So
It's a fair point.
Is that true with the county too? That they get a lot of their revenue from the water system?
Can anybody speak to that from the county? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't believe that's true, but that's just my opinion, not all that knowledgeable about the county water system.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, sir, do you have a question or comment?
Yes.
In my opinion, septic system drainage fields is a waste of land use. It's not a good solution for waste disposal. And the criteria that the county uses eats up a lot of acreage.
Right.
And restricts use of property as far as wanting to build a house.
And Roger's gonna talk a little bit more about the housing situation. That's an important point. Plays right into
How
it.
many of you are familiar with a water and sewer authority? I wasn't, but.
No.
Pardon?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miller, I know you would be.
We're
Yeah.
getting
But it's an independent, and I've just learned this fairly recently, it's an independent nonprofit organization that spends 100% of the income, which comes from people who use the water, so 100% goes right back into the system. There's no overhead or anything like that. They can issue revenue bonds, tax-free, like municipal bonds to fund it. It's being used in a number of counties in this area. Big Canoe is in the process of, that's the way it looks like, Miller, that they may be going with their system. And it's independent of any government. Changes in management, mayors, commissioners, city councilmen, doesn't affect it. It's a freestanding, independent authority that shares water with, and sewer mostly, doesn't have to be, they could be separate. But it looks to me like this is something that ought to be looked at very seriously. It has to be approved by the state. Rick Jaspers, our representative, would be the authority who would get that ball rolling within the state government to authorize us to do that if we wanted to do it. If we don't want to do it, that's fine. We would, certainly, it seems to me, if we've got a water system in Bent Tree, Big Canoe, Jasper, and the county, that's a lot of redundant services and pipelines and maintenance. It seems to me that it ought to be all interconnected in some way. I mean, there's only 30,000 people in the county.
And there's places in the county are connected, and we buy water from the county, and the county buys water at certain times.
Yeah.
Sometimes because of outages, and just because sometimes it just works out that way. Now, the county is part of another, even though they buy the water, they do the water, they still get most of their water from, what, Gordon and Calhoun, yeah.
From the standpoint, I had the opportunity to have Senator Chuck Payne in town partial days over the past couple of weeks, and was able to take him to the airport authority and some other businesses in the county. Jerry Nepatol spent some time with us and explained some issues with tax abatements and the bonding issue, which is the same thing, it's a legislative issue. But the water authority will give us the advantage because Big Canoe is the prime example. It's partially in Dawson, it's partially in Pickens. So neither county is going to assume the liability and everything of that entire community. But by establishing a freestanding water authority, they service the client, not the county or the city entity. So it gives us the opportunity, and there are grants available to an independent water authority that are not available to a county entity or a city. There's money out there. And when you look at water shortage, and a prime example is the water wars between Georgia, Alabama, and Florida.
Yeah.
When it got to the regional court system, they pointed out that 30% water loss by the city of Atlanta nullified their claim to any additional water. We have that same issue in some of the cities and areas in the county. So it's going to be a long-term solution, and it is not going to be inexpensive, which means it will have to be bond money so that it doesn't impact our citizens who can least afford it. But we have to look at the long-term improvement.
It opens the door for other activity, which will be important to us. And we've merged right into that discussion, which is the sewage system, and they really go hand in hand. The county is limited by a lot of the development that could take place in the county because the county doesn't have a sewage system. So an independent authority with an independent board with the ability to seek grants and have their own bonding opens the door for us to at least give whatever type of industry we want to bring into this area to employ people. because we don't have many good job opportunities for a lot of people. So whatever type of businesses that we decide, this group and our leaders decide they want to have, we need to have the resources, water and sewer, to be able to attract them so that that will take place.
And when you do that, you need a place to have the water, have the sewer. And that's another problem. It's not cheap.
Yeah.
It's very expensive.
Right.
So the city's in the process of, we're getting ready to I'm pretty certain we're gonna commit to upgrading our sewer system where we're not at near capacity, but we're pretty near to near capacity. I think at a minimum, exploring this option would get the facts, the transparent facts on the table where we can actually look at what the city has, what the county has. You don't always get this consistent updates from either or when they're not in the same room together. So I think it'd be a great opportunity to partner.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I live on Watson Lake, which is a soil and water conservation flood control. How does that fit in, if at all, with water and sewage? I mean, is that part of that component? Is that a totally separate thing?
I don't know the answer to that question. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think it somehow ties into the Limestone Valley Authority that Jay was talking about that kind of governs really all the water. Lonnie may know more about it than I do, but I think it kind of guides whatever we do with respect to water, and Jerry may be able to help too. With any kind of plans that we make, we have to kind of get their buy-in before they allow it to move forward.
The county and the city both has looked at the watershed lakes. There's several around the county, but nothing has become of it. There have been conversations with Limestone Valley. This has been looked at quite a few times. But a lot of those lakes are needing dredged out. The dams need to be maintained and looked at again, which they are inspected regularly. When I say regularly, yearly. But there's a lot to maintaining those whenever you turn around and start using them for a water source. And, you know, they were built years ago to control water. And so, you know, I don't know where that status is at, but I do know that the county and city both have looked at it. And as of right now, as far as I know, nothing's happening. I don't think it is for the county, it may be. But I know we have, you know, it has been explored.
I do know the Limestone Valley, when I tried to get him to do some dam maintenance, basically chuckled and said our lake was just not the worst one on their list. And you go, girl, fix it. So we got together with the association and pulled the privet and stuff off the roadside, because I found out that you're not supposed to have things growing on an earthen dam. And so we're doing our best, but that it is filling in. And
Yes, most of them are. Most of them need to be dredged out if you're looking at a water source.
Yeah, for those of you, there's a whole series of retention ponds that were built years ago, and the most obvious one is you go south on 515, just beyond the hospital, you'll see a big lake down low over to the right. It looks like a lake, and it's face full, has water in it most of the time, unless there's a drought. But that's a pretty significant size one, isn't it, Lonnie?
Yes, that used to be a lake. There is a dam down in the woods below the hospital.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Are there any issues of water rights and somebody owning rights to certain waters where they might be reluctant to share that asset?
It's only in cowboy movies.
Betcha they are.
Or withdrawal permits.
That's a thorny issue.
Especially county to county.
Other thoughts on water and sewer? Yes, sir.
In Nelson, and half of the cities in Cherokee and half in Pickens. If it's in Cherokee, in response to her inquiry, metropolitan, very large Atlanta regional, I'm not saying it's a water authority. I've only been to one of their meetings, but they have a whole set of criteria that all the cities need to be, it's connected with the EPA, and was stormwater, watersheds, the whole, all water related things. And there's some fairly specific requirements. I don't hear any of that on the Pickens side of Nelson, it's only on the Cherokee side. But there are clearly some models out there, and to address your question, I think there's probably something else that we should take a peek at.
Okay. Very good, thank you. I think, yes, sir.
Several years ago, the county did a sewage collection and treatment study. And as I recall, it's been some years ago, and I've gotten older in the process.
We all have.
The result was it only made sense to start with nodes and to put in small wastewater treatment plants. Because they couldn't afford to move the sewage very far. That's what would kill it. So you took nodes, I remember one, I think was Foothills was the example.
Right.
It would put in a small wastewater treatment plant, be monitored the whole business and operated. To my knowledge, it never went anywhere beyond there. But the study is there, done by engineering firm.
What I'm hearing is that there's a lot of good work that's been done in this area, and it needs to be pulled together and looked at by some folks. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a consensus that a water and sewage authority ought to be examined. That's not to say you're going to do it, but it certainly needs to be examined from a county and city's perspective. Is there anybody that disagrees with that? Lonnie?
Well, I've got a question. My question is, and I understand the whole concept of what you're saying, but my question is, okay, if the county, they're pumping water from Calhoun and they're getting it to the east side of Pickens County, if they have a busted line or something, they can cut a valve off and they can call the city and the city shoots them all the water they need or as much as we can spare. We have our own processing plant. We treat water. As far as I know, it's the only water treatment plant in the county. Pickens County don't have major reservoirs like Cherokee County and other counties do. So maybe I'm a little slow here, but I'm not understanding the whole concept of combining the two and having one unity of a water authority whenever you have two water systems and two governments that are working together, and when one needs something, the other is there to back them up, and whenever the other one needs something, that government is there to back them up, and they work together to make sure that everybody on their system has water. So, I mean, if it's working, why are you trying to fix it? And I do understand the water authority. I mean, I've been working with the city for 12 years. But the thing I don't understand is when you've got something working and you got two entities helping each other and working together to supply their customers, you know, what's the issue?
I'm just simply asking the question, is there a better way?
Well,
Is there a better way?
You need to have an open door to look at issues. I agree. That don't matter what you're doing. But I mean, I just wondered if there was an issue that I have missed or something that I haven't, that I've overlooked in my job as a city employee that is making everybody concerned about the water authority instead of having Pickens County and City of Jasper or whoever. I mean, I don't really have an issue with what you're proposing here, but I'd like to have a reason why, other than the fact of, well, somebody else will be out all the money But it is gonna take money out of the city and the county's budgets. I mean, both governments will hurt from it financially to a point,
Which would mean your taxes would have to go up.
and everybody's taxes will have to go up.
Well,
Hey Lonnie, does everybody in the city and the county pay the same amount for their water? Or does the county pay a different rate than the city and the
They're
city?
different rates.
So how is that, working for the people who are paying a premium for their water?
I don't know that. I don't.
Well, that's just one example of where there
Right,
might be,
right,
cost averaging, or if you wanna call it that.
right.
You know, that's just one example.
Yeah, there is a different premium, and I don't know what they are, but.
Robert, you got it.
Coming at it from a conservation biology standpoint, it kind of mirrors what Lonnie was saying. We need to grow where the infrastructure already is. Now, some of you folks live out on the top of the hills and you like it up there and you don't have water. There's a reason why people, you know, grow where you do have the infrastructure.
Are you,
That's because
you suggest we need to move down?
I'm suggesting that we need to look up, and I know that would probably go over like the proverbial lead balloon amongst these people in Jasper, but the infrastructure's down here. The infrastructure's already in place, and what it sounds like that you're even positing here is growth out into other areas. Why don't we think about, and this is not going to go over well with everybody, but why don't we think about growing where the infrastructure already is?
Where's that, Robert?
Here, in the city.
So our sewer's already almost at a maximum, so we're gonna have to grow. And I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, that makes a lot of
And
sense.
let's enhance the infrastructure that we have as opposed to like continuing to weaken it by filtering out like fingers into these little areas.
And the thing that I'm thinking, you know, if you get a community in desperate need, and I'm gonna use Mr. Schultz as an example, when we had the drought, your community was out of water.
Yeah.
What happened? You contacted the county and the city and city negotiated and figured prices. Next thing you know, the city put water to your house on top of the mountain. This community helps the residents as much as they can. And you know, we got a grant to help, a disaster grant to help get that entire community water.
And Sonny, I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't grow. I just think in this, and when you guys had your debate, everybody talked about wise growth. Folks, growth occurs where the infrastructure is. It always has. And then you go out from there. So why don't we think of, and Clayton, I appreciate what you guys have done, and I think that it's a wonderful conversation, and hopefully we'll all talk about that. But I think that it isn't just the water infrastructure, it's the growth of the place, all this other wonderful stuff.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet.
Let's add another facet to this thing as opposed to water authorities and whatever. Let's talk about building where the infrastructure already is. And if the infrastructure is bad, Sonny, let's make it better.
And that's what the city's doing now, we're
Yeah.
expanding the sewage plant, and that's where I go back to saying it's expensive.
Yeah.
And as far as sewer goes, it's probably the most expensive process that we got, it's crazy.
Well, and someone back here said that sewage systems are not the most, extemporaneous usage of the land. It's not. It's not.
Septic. So the new infrastructure's in good shape, Robert. The old infrastructure, don't really know necessarily even where it is, much less what.
Sonny, all this is doing is if we've got opposites of where we need to look, I just want us to think about the infrastructure that's on.
Yeah.
Well,
As we get into some of these other issues other than beating the horse about the water infrastructure.
well, let me suggest that a good look at it brings out the issues that you've just enumerated. And if that's what the study shows, then that's what it is. But who am I to say, or who are you to say, Hinton shouldn't grow? We shouldn't. That's not our decision.
30,000 taxpayers.
Well, I think wise decision is probably all of our responsibility. And I don't think we've necessarily been wise here in Pickens County. And maybe we can kind of in an ad hoc fashion try and attack it in a different fashion. That's all I'm suggesting.
We heard at the last meeting that the dollar store was the greatest thing since Southern fried chicken.
And there were several people that said they never shopped there, and they go there, admittedly, this man sitting across the table from me says he goes there 7 days a week.
Don't call people out.
Robert, we have friends that go to the Dollar General on, at Grandview and Cove Road, but they only go at night so no one can see us.
I've been there.
Clayton?
Yes, ma'am.
Did I hear, though, that the water authority, the way you're talking about it, can raise funds through bonds and other things?
And
that
grants.
And grants that might be more financially attractive than raising taxes in the existing structure? That, to me, was the thing
But
that
the
caught
thing
my
is, the
ear.
grants, okay, we're still tier 4. The grants are hard to get, no matter what you're doing.
And if you get the grants for the water authority, how's that gonna help the cities and the counties which are losing money because they've turned the water authority over? You're still gonna have to have a set amount of money to run the city and the county on.
And then
Particularly the
for
city.
the grants, well, most of them are matching grants.
Particularly the
So
city.
you have to come up with half of it.
All I'm saying is, let's have an open mind. Let's explore these ideas. I didn't come here with a mandate that we must do this, we must do that. I'm putting issues on the floor. The discussion is
Well, I'm not
good.
saying that I was for or against, I just want to understand your reasoning and why you're looking at this direction.
I'm looking at everything that I can find. We threw darts at a wall, and this was one of them. Now I'm gonna hit,
One last thing, the water service area dictated by the state legislature is an issue in this thing as well. So you may want to consider that one.
yeah, Sonny, when are you gonna bring water to Buffalo Monument Road for us, since the city has all the water rights up there?
You'll have to talk to Lonnie about that, I
See?
guess.
Now, there you go, Lonnie, that's an issue right there. I got a 600-foot well that's working fine right now, because I'm keeping all the neighbors away from me.
Right.
Okay, two more questions, and then we're gonna move on to my favorite subject, which is fire department services. Yes? Anyone?
Oh, I did have a comment about your question about what's in it for us. We've got duplicate billing services, we've got duplicate administration, we've got maintenance, you've got specialty equipment that probably you only need one, but if you have two departments, you need two of. So there's, on the admin side, there's got to be some efficiencies there.
Okay, but it is not. You do have two groups of billing departments, one for the county, one for the city. But the only where that the city and the county water lines are duplicated, so they have their own customer base. They don't have, like duplicate customers on the same line.
But it's not a linear cost thing that you have twice the customers. You still, only really need one boss. You've got computer systems, you've got tech support for the clerical people who run the computers, and you might not need two of everything in every one of those departments. You'll need more because you do have a bigger customer base, but it's not going to be, a straight line based on the number of customers.
So not only if you go with the water authority, not only are you gonna have to raise taxes, you're gonna add to the unemployment rate.
That's all that industry is going to attract, right?
All right, yes, ma'am. The last question on water and sewer.
Well, everyone, I'm indicated that we now had two systems and everything's fine. I don't know how many of these meetings I've attended that people have said, well, we can't grow because we don't have enough water.
But that's got to
So-
do with the reservoirs. There's a.
So with
there's
water
lack of
authority, one of my hopes of water authority would be having more water.
Okay, if you go to the governor's office and try to apply for a permit to build a reservoir, you're looking at 5 years down the road.
At least.
That's a minimum, if you can even get a reservoir permit. It takes time, it takes
You
years.
better start now.
It takes years to make this happen.
You gotta start somewhere.
That's
right, why not get started?
I had people tell me all my life I can't accomplish certain things. And by God, I'll work them. And so you gotta start somewhere. All right,
Right.
fire and emergency services. We have 2 fire departments. We have 1 EMS service, I believe, right? We have
Yes.
1 911 service. What's the consensus of consolidation of fire and emergency services under one umbrella? There's a cost there, there's a the duplication of services that we just talked about. You have extra fire equipment, you've got training, you've got payroll.
And from a fire services standpoint, the primary cost of it and the effect of that training is the ISO rating, whether you're in a commercial entity or whether you're a resident. So if the cost of training could be an umbrella, so that all volunteers and salaried employees in the fire and EMS services, if their training was parallel across the county, and everyone who was hired in, it was mandated as part of their job description that they must take the training, our ISO rating, county line to county line, that's what a comprehensive plan is for. It's not for, as Lonnie said, entities. It's for every citizen in the county.
Right.
So that umbrella of training will enable the ISO rating to be better county line to county line. That's what you really want to do.
It's training, it's equipment, it's response time, it's fire hydrants.
And it's also, from the equipment standpoint, if you have an entity where you're doing the training and you have parallel agreements, you can have a volunteer firehouse, but if there's a truck within a certain circumference that's serviceable to the rural, and Tennessee is a good example, they use what's called rural metro. So all their entities, if the fire stations are at the furthest corners from their metro areas, so that they can service inbound to the metropolitan areas and outbound to their urban areas. That keeps their ISO rating down. They don't build a firehouse downtown. They may have one, but the rest of them are at the extremities of the service area, and that way their circumference of service is larger.
And as it is right now, the city has a service area, the county has a service area. If something major comes, we get help from Cherokee, Gordon, Gilmer. I mean, we've got arrangements in place.
Yeah, we
So
do.
it's not really, it is duplicating, but it's not really duplicating, because they have certain areas that they service, and that's what they do. The city helps the county, and the county helps the city.
What's the county's ISO rating? Do you know, Lonnie? Ours is what, a 5 or 6?
There's a 5.
You can work on it. We got ours at Big Canoe down to 3. So if you just work at it,
Yeah, training, continuous training.
But, yeah. Again, I think fire and emergency services, there's a volunteer support firefighter. I live in Pickens County, I pay Pickens County taxes, but I'm a volunteer out of a station built in Pickens County that is managed by Dawson County. So we monitor a radio all the time. We go whenever we can. It's a volunteer thing. But when you monitor, you listen to emergency services like we did, you see just how quick all the services can get overwhelmed at any one time. I don't listen to Pickens that much because we would get dispatched by Dawson if we were going to respond to something. But when I do come down to Jasper and I've got the radio with me and I'm listening, I know just how much activity is going on in Pickens County, and there's a lot. Maybe what could come out of a study here, to your point, would be consolidation of training under one umbrella, such that we've got a level playing field. I don't know, but to me, it's one of those areas that should be looked at. Whether it's fine and working now, okay. If it ain't busted, to Lonnie's point, don't fix it. But I'm saying, let's look at it. Let's think about it. And if it makes sense, do something about it. Anybody disagree with that thought process? Okay. Well, I'm gonna sit down for a few minutes.
You need to sit down.
And Roger is gonna take over, and he's gonna talk about his favorite subject, which is traffic.
Well, that's just one of my favorite subjects. Let me also say at this point, thanks for your attention and for being here. We have a script we're going from, and at the end of the meeting, we're going to give you a complete outline of everything we've talked about. So we didn't give it out at first because we figured somebody would start reading and not listen to us talking. But you wouldn't do that with me. So you're going to get this. And also, there's been about 15 people that have given, Jerry Nectarball has been a great resource to us as head of the Chamber and Economic Development. Jerry, thank you for your input, because you have a great span of knowledge that I certainly don't have. And a lot of you here have been here. I've been in this county now for 34 years, and my two sons have houses next to us. So we've been here a long time. And let me just say, in general, I've worked all my life since I was about 8 years old. My dad taught me to be a workaholic. But the last 2 years, I've kind of slowed down. And that's why I got involved in the community, because I've been here half of my life and want to continue to stay here. But I start doing research into things, and I see there's been a lot of dysfunction, in my opinion, between the county and the city in different areas. And I think that slows our progress down. But I'm looking back over the 34 years that I've been here, and I haven't seen a whole lot of changes. For example, when was the last time a new road was built in the county? You know, through road where you can get from someplace. You know what the last one was? It was in the 1980s. It was 515. Other than subdivision roads, there hasn't been any new roads built. And so that's, you know, if we're going to meet the needs of the people and the accessibility and types, those are the things we have to look at. So what I want to do is talk about traffic, whether we like it or not. And I moved up here after living in Atlanta most of my adult life. I liked it up here because of the mountains and it's quiet, and I couldn't stand the congestion and the traffic in Atlanta, and it's even, as you know, you don't want to go to Atlanta anymore. So, but at the same time, growth is coming here whether we want it or not. I have a friend of mine who works for a large engineering firm, real estate development firm in Atlanta, and he said, he asked me where I lived, and because I don't see him that often, and he said, I told him I live in Pickens County, and he said, well, that's interesting because that's targeted as the next big growth county in the state, Pickens County. So the question is, are we going to be able to handle it, or are people just going to pass through here to go somewhere else? And how are our businesses going to survive? These are all things we have to look at and take into consideration. It's very interesting, on traffic, if you look at take the county map and look at it, if you want to get almost anywhere in this county, north, south, east, or west, you've got to come through the city of Jasper. Cove Road, Burnt Mountain Road, Grandview Road, Church Street, Main Street, they all come there. And if you want to go from here to here, you got to come through, and it's already backs up. You know, I don't want to go into Jasper on Friday afternoon. Number one, I know nobody's working on Friday, they're all driving their cars around. But you can't, it's very difficult. Now, it's not bad like Atlanta, but the point is it's going to get more and more congested. And someone suggested we widen 53 going into Jasper. Well, that's going to help a lot, isn't it? That's just going to put more traffic in the middle of Jasper. These are the things we need to look at long-term relative to traffic. Any thoughts on, what are your thoughts on the traffic? If you all, is this something that should be studied? I know the city hired a firm, I guess out of Atlanta, a year or so ago to do a study. And I don't know what happened to the study. I sat in on a couple of the meetings in this room, diagrams of how we can this, but I don't know that anything's been decided. Anybody know about that?
It's a work in progress. I mean, there's still, matter of fact, one of our meetings just in the last month, the diagrams and stuff was brought in and been discussed on how the traffic and everything around downtown. So nothing, you know, it hasn't been forgotten about. And it takes time, especially whenever you start talking about changing streets to one way or dividing highways or whatever. And so the Downtown Alliance the city of Jasper, the council, everybody's still open to suggestions and looking and trying to figure out the best thing to do. But they don't want to work on it today and do something and then figure out that don't work and have to change it.
Well, we need some long-range planning. And also, I'd like to say, I've talked to a lot of different people, and I think there's probably as many people that don't want to change things in the county as there are people who do want to change things in the county. And that's always an issue. It's like the election over in Alabama tonight, you know, how's it going to go? I think that we need a forum, ongoing forum of citizens, not necessarily politicians, but citizens who pay the bills through taxes and use the facilities of the county and find out exactly what is to the best interest of the majority of the people.
And you brought up a good point. How are we gonna pay for the roads? Through a T-Splosh? Because they're not gonna get no money from the DOT. They're too busy working, building them roads down the line.
Yeah, but you can say that again.
Roger, as to the study, it's still a working document, and I think part of that, the purpose of that study was traffic. That allowed us to fund it, but there were a lot of overlapping things that are being worked on, and actually some of those are being accomplished.
Good.
The issue with directing traffic, even some of the simple things that study came up with that would help us, for instance, let's just say a turn lane at 53 coming east on at Main Street.
A left turn lane? That would be wonderful.
But hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the key, I think you mentioned planning. There's no process where we kind of organize the planning to do that. The council doesn't get involved in those kind of things. We'd like to, but it just doesn't happen. And the DOT has been willing to spend revenue in our city and county. They just went through the same crunch that everybody else did. And so my guess is in the near future there will be some dollars that we can work in this county. But it's just like any other relationship, you have to develop the relationship in order for it to happen. And if they come to you and they say they got X amount of money they want to spend, and there's been no planning on how to spend it, they're going to take that money somewhere where the planning has been done. So
you're right. You're right. Again, I want to say these are just ideas and areas to focus, and I think ideally we'd have there's 7 things here. We've covered 4 of them. We're not going to do all of these at one time. We may never do any of them. But I think that if we as citizens don't step back and look at it and let our representatives know how we feel about it, then how do they know what to do? I mean, that's what democracy is all about. Affordable housing. One of the big issues for some people is where do they move to where they can afford to live. I was down getting my chainsaw repaired at the John Deere place there near Sackett's, and I met a young man, got talking with him. It turns out he's the general manager. He's like 25 or 26 years old, graduated from Auburn, got an opportunity, went to work for this company. It's not John Deere, it's the company that runs the store, and they have multiple locations. And so he was thrilled to be able to come here to be the manager of this store. And I said, well, where did you move? He said, I moved to Canton. And I said, why are you in Canton? He says, I could not find a suitable, affordable place to live in Pickens County. And folks, if you have children and they're looking for a place to live, Pickens County is a tough place. We have some young people that help us with our farm, and they now live in Cherokee County because they could not find a place to live for themselves and their 2 kids that they could afford. Or if they could afford it, it wasn't worth moving into. So that's a big issue going on, and particularly if we want to keep young people in this county, because most of you that have been here a long time know that when young people get their high school diploma or graduate from college, a lot of them don't stay here. They go elsewhere. And it's either because of jobs or they want to be where there's more recreation or activities to participate in. So, affordable housing, that means apartments, cluster homes, condominiums, whatever it is. And if you have those, then you're gonna attract young people and you're gonna keep them here. And the young people is what's gonna support this county in the long term. Is that, you know, I guess there's some pros and cons to that as to whether, yes.
I had a conversation with a banker here in the county just today. We were talking about the affordable housing portion of it. From a builder standpoint, for building a single-family dwelling under $200,000, it's not a profitable process.
Right.
There's just not enough margins in the 125 to 150. Pulte Homes, some of the larger nationwide builders have gone to a format of what they call quad housing.
4 houses, like duplexes, but double the size.
You have 2 common walls that are firewalls all the way to the roof line. You have a garage, you have a front yard. And then the development in Texas is where Pulte's really doing well with it. They'll go in, they'll have a section that's senior living in the quad housing where there's common area maintenance, where the seniors don't have to cut the grass and all. But they'll have an area where it's younger.
That's where I want to live, where you don't have to cut the grass.
Right,
Yeah.
you know, double income, no kids type move-ins and stuff, and those are in a 135 to 150 range, and Pulte, as large as they actually do some financing.
The biggest future construction in the city of Atlanta, besides these mega buildings, is apartments, because young people can't afford homes in Atlanta. The average price of a home in Atlanta is somewhere around $500,000 now. And not many people can afford that, but they can afford an apartment or living in a, like you say, a quadruplex. Those are the things we need to be looking at. Yes, ma'am?
And people need to understand, a lot of times when people hear affordable housing, they're like, oh no, you know, they have this bad image in their head, and they need to understand that that's not necessarily it. Not everybody can afford a huge home. But if you come up with these cluster homes or these apartments like you're talking about, it does bring in people that want pride in home ownership, but generally get stuck renting because they can't afford the big giant houses.
That's right. They need something that's modest that they can start with, and they'll move out or move up and someone will come in behind them.
And then also, when we talk about multifamily homes, goes back to the problem we just discussed, water and sewer.
That's right. If you don't have water and sewer, nothing happens. Right? And the sewer, right now, as I understand, the sewage system is limited to the city of Jasper. So if you want a big a restaurant or apartments or whatever, you've got to pretty much put them in Jasper. Is that correct? And I don't know whether that's good or bad. I guess it depends on a number of things, but that's the limitations that we have or dealing with.
Excuse me. Probably now, I think you have to have a minimum of 1 acre to build a house. I think you could reduce that to 3/4 of an acre with the septic tank, because I know Forsyth County does it for certain. And I think you can build houses. I think affordable houses now is certainly 150 to 200,000, but the land here is really cheap, quite frankly. And I think you can build affordable housing for 150 to 200,000, because I don't think most people want to live in apartments or townhomes or condos. Young people, I don't think they do. And I think really the aim should be 150 to 200,000 homes, and I think that is very possible.
I agree with you. The first house I had was 100 by 50 feet. That's a lot. You know, that's what, 5,000 square feet? That's about 1/7 or 1/6 of an acre. Not very, but it didn't make any difference to us. We wanted the house, and you know, the fact that we could reach out and touch our neighbor's house really didn't bother us too much. We were just happy to have a home to raise our children in. But affordable housing is really, really key to what's going to happen in the county going down the road. I'm saying 5 to 10 years from now. This isn't going to happen overnight.
But as far as to say what she was saying, the kids are buying townhomes because the kids nowadays are just like us. They don't want to cut the grass either.
No.
They'd rather pay an association fee and come home and go to a Friday and Saturday night.
I disagree with that. I think Gwinnett County boomed 10 years ago because they could build the small houses. The same thing with Canton. The townhomes I think are good, but I think when you start having a family, I don't agree with
Well,
that.
the thing is, and this is, I promise you, I just got through doing a bunch of subdivisions in Cobb County. that's what they're building. They're building townhomes. And what they're doing with the townhomes, they've got large playgrounds, they've got clubhouses. I mean, they're giving them other options. And they can't sell them fast enough.
The townhomes in the city area would be a good way to get people in there to revitalize our downtown area.
And cluster homes.
Or cluster homes.
Where the people can use it.
But it's gotta be, quality, not just, thrown up stuff. So.
Yeah, it's gotta be managed, absolutely.
And if you walk in these townhomes, I mean, they got tray ceilings, I mean, they dress them up, that's great.
Yeah. I have a granddaughter that lives in an area I never thought she'd be living in. She lives in a townhome, or cluster home, I guess, off of I-20 East of downtown, close to the zoo. And there was areas down there that a few years ago I wouldn't want to go through. But she's living there, and it's just booming. It's just filled with young people, and guess what? They don't even want to own cars. They want to be able to get rapid transit or, a car that drives up and they get in and it drives them to work and drops them off. It's a lot less expensive.
Really, I have a novel idea. Why don't we put some sidewalks in and where people can walk to the angles and whatever and use the infrastructure, and let's develop the downtown area for the folks, and I'm not casting stones at you, Roger. We live out in Hill City. There's a lot of people that live in the outer areas, but let's develop the downtown.
That's my next topic, Robert.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's put in infrastructure where the kids can walk to school. Yeah. My goodness, folks, and the big 800-pound gorilla in the room is everybody says, well, we got growth coming, but they don't want to look at the downtown area. Sonny, John, gosh, this is a gem here.
Man, I put it all over the paper for 3 months saying that's what I wanted to do. Don't be throwing me in there.
Let's think about how we can put things where we have the infrastructure.
Well, the issue is the cost of construction, on these smaller lots. So you have to have somebody who's vested in maybe not making as much money on the construction part and the sale of those homes as they would if they go out and build them somewhere else. Well, we kind of have that scenario. I mean, we have some large landholders that would be one way to get their businesses frequented by them investing in some downtown living.
Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprises has
Woodstock, look at Woodstock.
They have excelled upon making sustainable homes, smaller ones, and bunching them up. We've got a million examples close by to look at, folks, and it conserves the area. Chattanooga, there is no more vibrant place than Chattanooga. They've got the Riverwalk, they've got the infrastructure downtown, they've got the aquarium, and not that we're going to have an aquarium here in Jasper, mind you, but it'd be nice if we had a sidewalk or a park.
Robert, that leads me in, and then we're gonna, I don't want you to hear some of us have any dinner yet. Recreation is another thing, and I'm going to go through some bullet points with you. Number one, surveys show that the number one need in communities is access to sidewalks, paths, bike and golf cart ways, and woodland trails. Robert, in your conservation work, don't you agree with that?
I do, 100%.
Absolutely.
And we don't have it.
No, we don't have it.
That's right.
We're blessed with some magnificent countryside. Burke Mountain Road it's incredible to go up there, and people come from all over to go up there. But unless you happen to know where some trails are, which are hard to find, you're not going to go because they're very steep. But we ought to, in the city, there's not very far you can walk, maybe 3 or 4 blocks on a sidewalk, and then it stops. So where are you going to do it? Where's people who like to ride golf carts? I have a lot of friends in their 70s and 80s, and the highlight of their day is to get in their golf cart and ride it. If you live in Big Canoe, like you do, you can't ride bicycles. You can't ride bicycles in Big Canoe.
We possibly have money for sidewalks, right, Lonnie?
Let's raise money, guys.
Plus dollars.
Yeah, let's have this novel idea. Let's raise it. Let's don't ask the government.
We have the money. I mean,
SPLOST money, first off, the city was using it to resurface streets. We have covered many streets. Yeah. And, I mean, people are very proud of it. But we're going to soon be running out of streets to resurface, so sidewalks was in the SPLOST money. So we just had a conversation, the mayor and I did last week, that, when we get all these streets done and the money that keeps coming from SPLOST, already looking at streets to put sidewalks on. So we are talking about this. We are looking at, you know. how
So you're
much
gonna
money-
engage some opinions on where we should put those? Well, are we gonna engage some people to have some opinions on where those sidewalks might go?
We were just having a conversation that
Okay.
this is where it's headed.
Sorry, I
That
couldn't
once
resist.
we get done with the streets and we resurface our last street, then we're gonna start looking at sidewalks because that was in the spot and we should have some money left.
The city's a logical place to put it, and when you have sidewalks, you also want places for people to sit, parks to go to, shade to sit in, and so on. That's what people
look at golf carts.
Well, on that, the council a few years ago passed a meeting that there was, I think, 10 streets in the city of Jasper, and we made it legal to ride golf carts on. We had 2 ladies that rode golf carts in their community where John lived, and you never see nobody else on the other streets, and we made it public. I mean, we run the ads in the paper, we put it on our bulletin board in City Hall. We have tried to open the city up to golf carts. We have applied for a grant twice to put a golf cart trail from Arbor Hills into Jasper, and we missed it. It's based on a point system, and we missed it the last time by 2 points. So this lady that helps me write the grants and helps the city work with this, she said, let's look at it one more time and apply for it again. So if we could possibly get a golf cart trail from Arbor Hills to Jasper, maybe the people from Arbor Hills would like to ride the golf carts.
This is another whole area that the county and the city together need to focus on. Really interesting. I have a granddaughter who loves to swim. She's homeschooled by her parents, and she went to the swimming pool in June and July, and they closed it down, the swimming pool, at the end of July. And I'm saying, you know, we're not Canada. Weather's still kind of warm here, May through September and October, but there's no place for young people to swim other than the 2 months of the year. The answer to that is either keep the pool open longer or have a better pool or something. I don't know what the answer is. It's just, to me, it's something that we need to address for people who like to swim. Yes?
To your point, that's been my dream for years. Anybody in here that served in the armed services and been around, every base you go to has a gymnasium, indoor pools, indoor track. Larger cities have YMCAs with things like that. In my opinion, if you really want to help this community out, focus and put something like that in place. It's not just for the kids, it's for the geriatric crowd. It's going to all the medical facilities, getting over there. Have a diving well, a championship diving board, have the other pool.
Has anybody seen the swimming facility in Cherokee County?
Yes.
Off of Sixes Road? It is unbelievable.
It is.
It looks like the Georgia Tech deal or the Olympic. It's unbelievable. Now, they got a lot of people and a lot of money, and we have a few people and not too much money. But that's something we ought to be working on.
The city of Kansas got the Y. You get a chance to go by and look at it.
It's very
It's very nice.
Pardon?
They've got a Y with indoor pool.
Where's this?
Canton, why?
Yeah. But I mean, they're, Pickens County adjoins Cherokee, everything's moving north. It really is. One other thing, having young children, grandchildren here, when my 2 sons take their kids somewhere on a weekend or do something, they don't do them in Pickens County. They either go to Canton or they go to Woodstock, because there's not a movie theater here, there's not a bowling alley here, there's not a putt-putt golf course here, there's not a public lake to fish in. If you live in Bentry or Big Canoe, that's fine, they got their lakes, or Lake Grandview, but they're private. But a kid wants to go fishing in a lake, where do they go in a boat in Pickens County? They don't. So we've just, this place has grown, but it hasn't provided the infrastructure for young people. That's all on that. The last thing I want to say is that, and this has a lot to do with Robert, And that has to do with the zoning of our the land within the county. We have, and you might want to address this yourself because you're more on top of it than I am, but there is a great need to take a look at the current zoning laws or areas that are zoned for commercial, residential, manufacturing, etc. Because if we don't do that, we're going to end up having a real mixture of chicken houses and factories next to houses. And you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's really going to be a community-wide thought process involving Nelson, involving, we've had at times in these meetings some Talking Rock folks, and I've really appreciated their time, and I hope for our last meeting on Tuesday, February 6th, that we can get the mayor and a couple of more Talking Rock people back here. It's a Jasper thing, it's a county thing. A big question is, for example, is Nelson, is Jasper going to, in the next 5 or 10 years, be open to being the receiver of density, of especially Jasper, infrastructure that you touched on, the already fact that there's commercial, there's industry, there's more apartments and cluster housing, if limited, in Jasper, and there's sewer in Jasper. So that typically in communities, cities that have those things, infrastructure and sewer, and are near where commercial and industrial are, that's where the cluster housing, the apartments, the small lot, very small lot subdivisions of 5,000, 10,000 square foot size lots, that's where they go. The county right now, 95% of the land in unincorporated Pickens County is zoned agriculture and rural residential.
Yeah, with a 3-acre minimum?
Rural residential is 1.5 acres, and then agriculture, I mean, because almost everything, not everything, but almost everything in the county is on septic, it's going to naturally limit it. The good things, I guess you might say, in favor of affordable housing in the county is there's not a minimum square footage, and there's still the ability to have manufactured housing, and you can have multiple houses on one piece of property in the county if you want, but you know, there's a lot less likelihood that, you know, a bomb of development is going to go off somewhere in the county with 1,000 new homes on teeny tiny lots. It could. I mean, I've seen it happen in North Paulding with private, you know, sewer package treatment plants. So it could happen, but it's more likely if Jasper wants it, if the elected officials are open in the next 5 to 10 years for upzoning, you know, that's got to be a, you know, decision of the elected officials, of the citizens of Jasper. Same thing with Nelson. I mean, I don't know what they're going to be, but the county seems to be more likely to be looking towards staying rural. If I'm off base, then that's fine. I mean, I'm, you know, glad to bend to the will of whatever the county citizens is.
Thank you. We're fortunate to have Robert here. Robert's been with us. How long have you been with the county?
Just 2 years.
Richard, I'm sorry. I call you Robert. Let's both start with an R. Richard's been here, but he's innovative, he's thoughtful, and he's organized, and I think he's a big asset for the county as a whole. We're going to give you these summary pages. My email address, Don House's email address, and Clayton is on that as well. So if you have any thoughts, communicate with us. If you want to get involved with us, yes, sir, we would welcome any of you that want to serve as an advisor to what we're trying to do. I heard a lot of good ideas this evening, and I'm just pleased that you showed up and did all this. Our part of the program is over, and I'm going to turn it back over to Richard.
So you see on the agenda, our next meeting is Tuesday, February 6th. And what we're trying to reach in the comprehensive plan is consensus. The question has come up, and I've been asked many times, okay, well, we've had all these meetings and we've had all this discussion, so who makes the plan and who approves it? Well, Ethan and I are going to be in February, March timeframe trying to understand the majority, the consensus opinion of folks in the county, folks in the cities, and once we have a draft plan, it's going to be open for public review, and it can be changed, modified a lot, because again, if we end up being, if me and Ethan end up being a little off base of our perceptions, understandings of the majority rule, then we'll be glad to change things. At the end of the day, who has to approve it is the elected officials of all the jurisdictions, and then it gets sent up to the state for, you know, they review it, but if the elected officials are good with it, then the state's going to be fine with it. And hopefully, once it's approved next year, then it will be put into practice, put into use. So again, Tuesday, February 6th, here, 6:30. We hope to see you then. Roger, Clayton, anything else?
No, I appreciate all of the feedback and comments and thoughts. I thought it was a good meeting. I hope you did as well. So thank you for your participation.
All right, y'all. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
One more thing, Richard, real quick before everybody leaves. You'll all notice that you've got stickers on your desk. Those stickers are red, yellow, and green. On those stickers, you'll see numbers written. Well, I got you a real quick exercise, part of what Richard just said, to put that into action so that we can sort of get a consensus of what everybody thinks. We've heard a lot of ideas mentioned in the previous meetings. There's some great things mentioned today. Outstanding discussion. I've worked in quite a few counties and cities, communities. We cover at the Regional Commission 15 counties in northwest Georgia, all the way down pretty much to the outskirts of Atlanta, all the way up to Tennessee. And I've worked in planning, comprehensive plans in quite a few counties, and I've got to say, I've seen some of the best conversations and cooperation here in Pickens County in several different ways, these meetings being a great example. Now, what we've got to do, a little quick exercise here, is to take those stickers, and there's a sheet poster up on the wall over there. Now, it's not going to cover all the really hairy detailed things that get way down in the weeds, because that would just take too much of our time here tonight since we're kind of limited. That's some information that came out of, or just some things that have been mentioned, ideas that have been tossed around during some of our previous 3 meetings. And some things that were mentioned in the survey that we sent out before we started having these meetings. So what we want to do there is kind of try to isolate what are the major needs. What's the consensus of where our focus needs to go with the comprehensive plan? And it deals with infrastructure, land use, so on and so forth, and all those things. And the idea here is if you were in charge, every individual in this room, just imperceptibly in your own mind, if you were the guy in charge or the gal in charge, and you had the budget, you had the checkbook and the ability to put that money where you thought it needed to go in the term, and thinking of the term in money, as that's how generally decisions get made and projects get funded. So everybody's got these 3 stickers. One of them says 25, 50, and 100. Think of that as in dollar amounts. So everybody's got $175 to spend on projects. Now, to keep it simple, we kept 3 things there, but just to keep it as simple as possible, everybody's got your stickers. The numbers are on the stickers in case you wonder, but that's just a way to quantify what the priorities are in terms of funding. If you were in control of the budget, and we're going to use that as a tool to figure out where we need to put our focus in the comprehensive plan. So without further ado, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. And just if you would, you place your stickers up on the wall.